This time, we're diving into every single king of Joseon. I've gathered all the shorts in one place, so whether you're working, chilling, or even falling asleep, Korean history will flow straight into your head. Ready? Let's begin. What happens when a general turns his sword against the dynasty he once served? Yi Seong-ye, later King Taejo, crushed rivals, toppled Goryeo, and in 1392 declared a new dynasty, Joseon. He moved the capital to Hanyang, reshaped the state under Confucian ideals, and rebuilt land ownership to weaken corrupt elites. Yet behind the glory of foundation lay blood. His own sons fought in deadly power struggles, leaving a dynasty scarred from its very beginning. Was Taejo the brilliant founder Korea needed, or the man who lit a fuse that burned his family for generations? What happens when a prince kills his brothers to seize the throne? Yi Bang-won, later King Taejong, turned Joseon into a state ruled by iron discipline. After the Bloody Prince's rebellion, he dismantled private armies, centralized power under the throne, and introduced population controls with the Hokai system. He was ruthless with rivals, even within his own family, but his strength forged the framework of a dynasty that lasted 5 centuries. Was Taejong a tyrant drenched in blood, or the necessary hammer that shaped Joseon into steel? What if a king gave his people a voice they never had before? King Sejong the Great of Joseon didn't just rule, he revolutionized communication by creating Hangul, a writing system simple enough for commoners to master. But that was only the beginning. He advanced science with rain gauges, sundials, and astronomical charts, while securing the northern frontier with new settlements. He was a king who turned knowledge into power, reshaping his kingdom through wisdom rather than. Was his greatest triumph the alphabet, or proving that true strength can come from empathy and vision? What happens when an uncle seizes the throne from his own nephew? King Taejo of Joseon rose through blood, overthrowing young King Danjong in a brutal coup. Yet behind the cruelty came order. He codified laws, strengthened the military, and centralized the state's power like never before. Scholars mourned the end of Sejong's golden age, but Taejo argued that stability demanded iron hands. Was he a usurper who murdered a boy king, or the hard ruler who forged the foundations of Joseon's survival? What if a king wore the crown for only a single year before fate struck him down? King Yejong of Joseon inherited the throne from Taejo, but was frail, more a symbol than a ruler. His court tried to maintain rituals, foreign diplomacy, and order while he struggled with illness. Yet his sudden death left a fragile dynasty scrambling once again for stability. Was Yejong's reign a forgotten whisper in Joseon's history, or the quiet hinge that opened the way for King Sunjong's long and stable rule? What if a king turned ideals into law and gave his dynasty its permanent backbone? King Sunjong of Joseon didn't conquer with swords, but with institutions. He completed the Gyeongguk Daejeon, the great law code that bound rulers and subjects alike. He opened the Hongmungwan, a hall of scholars who advised him and shaped policies with Confucian wisdom. His reign strengthened the provinces, enforced social order, and nurtured culture. Was Seongjong's genius in his quiet discipline, the king who built the system that outlasted him by centuries? What happens when a prince becomes a tyrant, drowning in fear and pleasure? Yeonsangun of Joseon began as a king haunted by the fate of his mother, but soon turned rage into terror. He silenced scholars, purged officials in bloody literati purges, and crushed institutions that kept kings accountable. While his court groaned under executions, he filled the palace with parties, wine, and theater. In the end, his own officials rose against him in the Yeongjong coup. Was Yeonsangun a victim of trauma, or the tyrant who destroyed himself? What happens when a king takes power by coup, yet finds himself trapped between reform and resistance? King Jungjong of Joseon rose after Yeonsangun's tyranny, promising renewal. He embraced reformers like Jo Gwangjo, who dreamed of a pure Confucian state, purging corruption and reshaping society. But the old guard struck back. Schemes and rivalries ended in Jo's execution, and reforms collapsing overnight. Yeongjong's reign became a battlefield of ideals versus survival. Was he a weak king undone by factions, or the tragic ruler caught between vision and reality? What if a king's reign lasted less than a year, but carried the hope of a generation? King Injong of Joseon inherited his father Jongjong's troubled throne, determined to revive the dream of reformer Jo Gwangjo. For a brief moment, scholars saw a chance for justice, clean government, and Confucian ideals restored. But fate was cruel. Within 8 months, the young king fell ill and died. Was Injong poisoned by rivals, or simply struck by destiny? His reign leaves us wondering, what future of Joseon died with him? What happens when a boy king sits on the throne, but his mother rules in his name? King Myeongjong of Joseon was crowned young, with Queen Dowager Munjong holding the reins. She revived Buddhism, empowered her relatives, and reshaped politics, while the king remained in the shadows. Courtiers clashed between Confucian ideals and Buddhist patronage, and corruption spread under powerful in-laws. Only later did Myeongjong try to rule on his own. Was he a quiet puppet all his life, or a king who struggled too late to claim his crown? What happens when a kingdom is torn apart by war, and its king flees the capital? King Seonjo of Joseon began with scholars and reforms, but his court split into bitter factions. When Japan invaded in 1592, he abandoned Seoul and fled north, leaving generals and commoners to fight for survival. Heroes like Admiral Yi Sun-sin rose to defend the land, but the king's reputation never recovered. Was Seonjo a coward who betrayed his people, or a tragic ruler crushed by forces too great to control?